Okay, it looks like we are live at this very moment. And okay, so hi, I'm author Shannon Reber, clearly. And this is my narrator, um, Benjamin Fife. So there we go. Let's see. Ben has done. How many books have you narrated now, Ben?
It's somewhere in the range of 80 now. I'm starting to lose track.
That is pretty impressive.
I try to keep track, but I've got a bunch on the docket. So probably by the time I'm done with everything I'm signed up for right now, it'll be 90 or 100.
That is very cool. Seriously. Okay, so what was the first one you did?
The first book I ever did, I think, was Casey's Cave, and it's kind of a kid's book. It's a little kind of a weird kind of Irish tale, and it was a fun book to do. But I narrated it entirely in an Irish accent, and which was not what I was necessarily expecting when I got into doing audiobook narration. But now I've probably narrated more with British accent than with my, native Idaho dialect.
You know what? I've been saying Iowa. I'm sorry. I mixed that.
That's okay. Everybody says Iowa when they're thinking Idaho and vice versa. So we're all used to it.
Oh, okay, all right. And let's see. So the Irish accent. Can you still do it?
Can I still do it?
Yeah.
Oh yes, I can do it. It just comes down to thinking about how many beans do the Irish put in their cans of beans.
Sorry, Ben, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
It just comes down to thinking about how many beans the Irish put in a can of beans, and it's only 239, because if they did one more, then it'd be 240.
All right.
That's how I get into my Irish accent.
I like it.
Goofy, but it works.
It does. I like it quite a bit, actually. But let's see. But Irish do things like beans on toast, so you got to be really careful about the amount of beans. Or is that just British? No, I think Irish do that as well. So yeah, they would have to count their beans quite carefully that way. Okay, so let's see. Your do brain work. Different voices that you have done. You've done British. You've done Irish. You obviously can do Merkin since you're Merkin. What else have you done?
One of the books that I did that had the most accents in it was actually a fantasy American Revolution kind of takeoff. So I was doing everything from Native American to various immigrants, and there were dwarves and elves and all kinds of things. So I was doing Welsh and English and Boston, and it was a fun one to do. I'm actually doing the second book of that one in the next month or so here.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that actually sounds like a lot of fun to me. I like that a lot. How do you keep track?
Yeah, the first book covers the Revolutionary War. The second book goes up until just before the Civil War. You find out one of the characters who's been in the second book is actually Sojourner Truth.
Can I ask a question?
But I'm not going to say who it is because
Yes.
spoiler.
Can I ask a question?
I don't think you can hear you. You'd have to come up here.
Okay, I do have a question.
Can you hear, Ben? Okay.
How do you keep track of all those accents when you're reading
That was my question.
Depending on how many characters are in the book, sometimes I'll do a spreadsheet. I had one that the author had. There were 67 different characters in the book, and some of them were pretty minor characters, but there was also several who are throughout the series. And so she gave me the spreadsheet with different ideas for actors and whatever, like if she were to and I kind of try to do that sometimes with people, especially when it's a larger cast, is just say, okay, if you were to cast this as a movie, who would you want to play this? And then it gives me an idea of where to go from there. I don't do like an exact imitation of them or whatever, but it gives me an idea of kind of everything from the body size of the individual to gender, nationality, so on and so forth. And also, when I'm narrating, I've already at least read the book once, and I've made some notes and whatever, and it just is a matter of getting into the head of the various characters in it. So.
I see, gotcha. Well, I do remember you asking me that question last year, and I wasn't thinking when I did it. I would have told you. Did you ever watch the show Merlin?
I can't hear you very well, Shannon.
Oh, sorry then. All right, I was basically asking if you ever watched the show Merlin.
Oh yeah.
That was what I wish I would have told you, because that is basically the entire cast list that I was thinking of, but I did not think of it.
Some good characters there. So.
Yeah, well, okay.
And, you know, part of it also does come down to the writing. If an author writes a character really well, it becomes easier to give them a unique voice. And I'd say, you know, Enya and some of the other characters in this book are very unique individuals. So
yeah, the puppeteer has some pretty serious uniqueness. Evil. He's simply evil.
Oh yeah, he's a little over the top, but
yes.
It was kind of fun too.
See, that's actually the kind of fantasy that I like. I like black and white, where you know for sure that this guy is evil, and that's just, there's no question in your mind. So that was what I went with, but I do still sometimes like shades of gray in my
Well, you say that, but then it's even Enya through the whole series is feeling like she is not worthy.
Yes.
So
that was actually a pretty standard teenage thing in my opinion.
Okay.
Teenage girl. It seems pretty. I don't know.
More than that, even it's a teenage girl who's lived through some pretty extreme trauma.
Exactly.
On a regular basis.
On a regular basis, yes. Because I'm evil, and I'm willing to admit that. Megan is still holding a grudge because of a character that I killed off in a book probably 4 years ago. She read book 1 and she refused to read book 2 for 2 or 3 years, and she's still holding a grudge. She's like, no, I can't read. No, I can't read book 2. You killed my favorite character. I can't do it.
I confess I was a little bit surprised when a character who had been a pretty good guy in the first 2 books, in the 3rd book, all of a sudden is like, whoa.
I know. So. I was surprised by that as well. I don't plan my books. I don't know if that's obvious enough.
You put a dead character in a book?
No.
He kills them off.
I did, but the character that he's talking about, who was good through books 1 and 2, and is evil in book 3.
Yeah.
That came as a surprise to me as well. So there we go.
And a lot of the authors who I've worked with, especially on multiple books, it's like the gal who I'm doing the Jane Austen's Dragon series with, she regularly says, I was going great on my plot, and then the dragons got involved.
I like that. I have every intention of reading that series. I just haven't gotten around to it yet because my to be read list is pretty extensive. And
oh yeah, I'm honestly, I've lost track of how many books I've done it. I'm not sure if I'm doing the 10th or the 11th book next month.
Oh my word!
It's superb, and
okay.
it's kind of something where for people who are like Jane Austen purists, they might have issue with it because it really is. You have the Jane Austen characters, but then you add dragons and this whole dragon hearing culture and whatever to it.
Okay.
But whereas like, so the first three books basically cover Pride and Prejudice, but beyond the first book, Jane and Bingley like have nothing to do with it.
Oh, really?
Until this book that I'm about to narrate, they're finally back into it.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
But
so
you have all kinds of other sub characters who have a much larger role. Like Mary Bennett has a huge role.
okay.
So
Now hold on a second. Mary was the one who was the library fanatic, correct?
yeah, Mary's the kind of stuffy one, and because what it comes down to, the reason why Jane has a more Jane is kind of relegated to whatever is she doesn't hear dragons, and Mary does, and Elizabeth does. So it's kind of like, well, we'll just leave them on Netherfield living happily ever after. But anyway, so
That's kind of funny. Okay, so let's see. You've got Jane Austen's Dragons. You've got my trilogy. You've got the first book you ever did. What is, I suppose, the most surprising book you've narrated?
there's every book I do surprises me a little.
Yeah.
But I did one that I saw it up for audition last summer, and my initial reaction based on the title was I was like, this has got to be some kind of right wing extreme garbage or something, because it was called Blackwash: The Untold Stories of Reverse Racism, and I just saw it and I'm like, whatever. And then I actually, after I had seen it for a week or two, still on ACX up for audition, I looked at it a little closer and I looked at the description, and it's not actually right wing at all. It's this black guy wrote this. He basically rewrote history. That Africa was the dominant culture, and Africa is who came and colonized America, and Europeans were brought as slaves. So he goes through, and the entire book takes like historical accounts, but then reverses it.
Okay.
But it's also kind of it sometimes is a little bit hard to get your head around, because he takes just like black people have Europeanized names.
Okay.
In this book, white people have Africanized names. So he takes real accounts from history and just switches them completely. And it's very good for somebody who's thinking, well, gee, I'm not racist or whatever, and looking and saying, well, if this happened to you, how would you feel about it?
Okay.
If you grew up with this background, and I've done a couple of kind of more controversial or racially charged kind of books like that, but that one in particular was kind of fun to do. I kind of approached it like, okay, if a similar book from the black perspective today might be narrated by like Morgan Freeman. So not that I'm Morgan Freeman, but I kind of tried to narrate it like, okay, I'm a white Morgan Freeman in this universe.
Okay. All right.
So
That actually does sound really interesting.
mm-hmm.
And as an audiobook, I think I would like that more than reading it as, reading the words, just hearing the voices in your head. I think I would prefer to hear the audiobooks or book. I guess.
Feel free to check it out.
I will. Well, now I have to read all of Jane Austen's Dragons. Now I have to read that one. My TBR list is growing exponentially. I'm not sure this is
another series, another sci-fi series that I did too is Chronicles of Theron. That Theron is the first synthetic being, and so instead of artificial intelligence or whatever, they call it synthetic intelligence. And but it's got some cool ideas in it too. I'm hoping he gets back to writing more of it. He told me he had like 8 books planned for it, but I've only narrated,
Oh, okay.
3.5 so far. So
Ah, yes. Now, the guy who was in the group chat that we did having to do with the
Brad,
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 yes,
Brad Swift.
Brad. Is
Yeah.
that his then?
No, his there's I've done one that's the fringe candidate, which is kind of an alternate uh, history of America to thing. To only it's like a political intrigue kind of thing. But the
Okay.
main one that I've done with him, that I did a bunch of live readings of and whatever, was his Zach Bates Eco Adventure series, and that's kind of more directed for kids.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and that's a fun series too. I like them all. They're all kind of like my children in a way. So.
Well, you've got like 20 of those anyways, so
No, just a half dozen.
Oh, well, okay, that's okay then. When you first told me that you had 6 kids, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. And then I was talking to somebody else about it. I was like, he's got 9 kids. Like, wait, I mixed those numbers up. Darn it. I turned your number upside down. So yeah, setting the record straight now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the youngest of 6, and I've got 6 kids myself. So.
Dude, wow. So you really had no chance of any sanity being left in your life. No chance.
It's pretty much, I've just embraced the oddity that is life and chaos.
Yes. As a person with no kids, I'm cringing, like even imagining it. So my panic attack might start up in just a minute. So don't mind me.
I've done those too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Think of it this way, Shannon. Once you've had one, the level of responsibility is there. After that, it doesn't make any difference.
Could you hear that, Ben?
No.
Okay.
What was the question?
There wasn't a question. She's speaking too low to be heard. Once you've had one,
The level of responsibility is already there. So after
the
that,
level
it's
of responsibility is already there.
So it doesn't make any difference.
So it doesn't make any difference, is what she said.
Okay, yeah. I actually had an uncle who passed away about 10 years ago that he was old enough to be my grandpa. He was my dad's oldest brother.
Okay.
And I wasn't close to them, but I went to his funeral. He had 12 kids. And he would actually tell people it's not like raising 12 kids. It's like raising a family of 3, 4 times, which that's kind of the way we did it too. We have our older 3, and then we took a 5-year break, and then we had a couple, and then we took another 5 or 6 year break and had our last one. We're done.
Yeah, it seems like a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, we're done.
Well, that is nice because now you have someone who is old enough to take care of the youngest. So you.
Oh yeah.
You guys can.
Date night is a lot easier when you have built-in babysitters.
Yes, I'm sure they appreciate that very much.
It's also it's date night, but it's also video game night, so they get something out of it too.
It seems only right that they should. Okay, so I was hoping that you would do a reading from my book, if you wouldn't mind.
You betcha.
All right.
I will just start with the prologue if that works.
That works for me.
Okay. So this is from The Puppeteer, Book 1. Prologue. Warm sunlight shone down through the canopy of bold green leaves. It made flowers shine like gemstones scattered across the ground. The narrow river glistened like crystal. Peace was not an exception. It was the rule in the land of Viridian. No one had marched on them in war for millennia until that day. The clangs and thuds of soldiers marching was an ominous contrast to the quiet tranquility. It should have made the people of Viridian shiver, though they did not. Their eyes didn't turn in the direction of the army of Gamboge, who wished to take from Viridian all the land could surrender. That land had much to give. Its trees bore fruit year-round, its temperature always warm, its rivers and lakes of the clearest, cleanest water. The people of Gamboge believed they should have that heavenly land for themselves. It offered peace to those who called it home. Its lush landscape gave the inhabitants whatever they required. Few who called the place home had ever left its borders. Those who did returned with a heightened sense of the paradise of their homeland and did not leave again. The army of thousands of soldiers came to a halt when they reached the river which bordered Viridian to await their orders. Those soldiers knew their duty. They would slaughter every person they saw. It was their way to leave no survivors, give no quarter. Their mouths fell open when they saw the most beautiful woman on the opposite bank. Her dark hair, olive skin, and eyes the color of sage grass were yet one more perfection the land of Viridian had to offer. She surveyed them with nothing but curiosity. She did not appear frightened in the least. She held her hands out before her in a gesture of warning. This land is fortified against all who wish to kill our people. If you continue, you will die, the woman said, her voice clear. It carried to every man. Those men stared at her for a long moment before one of them let out a loud bark of laughter, and the rest of them joined in. They roared with hilarity at the notion that the peaceful land had any defense which could stand against them. The general of the army raised his sword to point it at the woman. He continued to laugh at the idea of such a woman telling him of the fortifications of this peaceful land. He had been told the land of Viridian had no army. He knew his victory would be an uncomplicated one. He smiled at the woman, then ordered his men to attack. The moment that order had been given, and each man made his decision to obey, a fire rose up from the ground. It was like nothing the men of Gamboge had ever seen. The land was surrounded by a wall of white-hot fire. The archers who had let off the first volley of shots watched their arrows turn to ash. The men faltered, terror written clearly on their faces, but not one of them backed down. They ran forward, ready to have the victory they had been told would be easy for them. When they chose to continue on, the fire shot out in a wave that burned those men to cinders. And suddenly, the land of Viridian was brought back to its peaceful existence. Birds sang, leaves waved, water trickled, paradise had been maintained. The only sign all was not as it had been before was the woman who stood on the river's far bank. Tears streamed down her cheeks while she stared at those piles of ash. She had no idea why they had not listened to her, or to the well-known history of the land of Viridian. The woman wiped her tears away. A certainty grew inside her. Catriona, my dear sister, it is time for you to tell your daughter that she is the other fire wielder of this kingdom. If I am killed, she will be the only protection left to Viridian. She must be prepared. I believe a war is brewing. Her connection to her sister made such messages easy for them to share. She turned her eyes around the land beyond the barrier formed by the fire wielders. She wondered how the attack would come. Without the fire wielders, the land of Viridian and the secrets it held would be destroyed. This must not be. She and her niece must continue on. The lives of all the people must be protected.
Yay.
That's the prologue.
Well done, good sir. Okay, so I have to tell you, I was thinking when we started this because of the Game of Thrones people and with how grimdark that is, I really thought that people might be a lot more interested than they actually seem to be in this book. So darn it, maybe we can actually get them interested now by hearing you read the prologue.
I'm all for promoting it wherever we can. It is definitely grim dark, but I enjoy your writing. It's something where sometimes when I narrate, like some authors, it just doesn't flow as well. Your writing, it lends itself very well to narration, and I think it's good storytelling.
Thank you. Well, to be completely honest, I think the reason that it does is because for me, it plays out like a movie in my head while I'm writing. So I'm basically listening to the audiobook in my head while I'm writing. Because
that works.
Yeah. So yeah, it that probably does help, but I don't know. Quick note though. I decided when I finished the Seal of Solomon series that I thought I was done, but then this idea popped into my head to take Aymara and actually tell her story. So I started messing with this story idea, and it turns out that that morphed into something completely different, where Aymara is, I'm not sure how to describe her character. She's like, something happened before this trilogy takes place that is alluded to as a horrible, world-changing, life-changing event for all the worlds. And she is responsible for this, but it's not specifically said what it is. And so I took everybody, Enya, Brand, let's see, I can't remember who else, but they are actually part of this story. But it takes place in the human world. And you get like glimpses into the world that you read. The medieval type world. So it was a lot of fun to do.
You have the gatekeeper, which stands between the human world and their world.
Exactly.
So I can understand how you would do that, and I've been curious if you had already written something or if you had that in the works. Is it already written, published, or whatever? Or
Book 1 is, but I'm not going to do anything with it until I finish the trilogy.
Okay.
And it's yeah, I'm gonna wait just because I'm having issues with focus these days. Focus is not happening for me, so my mind flits between too many different things. Yeah, it's a problem. But I mean, you've got 80 audiobooks, I've got 60 books. I mean,
yeah, but it's something where I understand, you can sit down and do output, but it blows my mind when like the Jane Austen Dragon series in particular, she's putting out at least 2 of those a year, and then generally speaking another book or 2 that are unrelated, and it blows my mind that somebody can write that much. And obviously you're one of those people who does write that much.
I used to be. I've slowed down a lot. But I mean, like this year I've got 5 published titles, but they're all short stories. So the plan is to finish everything that I have started, and have been putting off for years. I'm going to finish the trilogies that need to be finished. So once I get that done, I would be interested in talking to you, because I would be interested to know how you do with a Southern accent, because this takes place in Tennessee as a general rule.
I've done some of that.
Yeah.
So Well, like that American history one, the
Oh, yeah.
fantasy American history. There's
Yeah, yeah.
there's some Southern in there.
Okay.
The thing that sometimes gets confusing is there are some elements of Southern and British that are kind of similar.
Yep.
So it's a matter of sometimes having to do retakes because I slip into the wrong accent for whatever. But I like a challenge, so
Good to know.
I'm always good for that.
Yeah. My family is Southern, so I slip into Southern like accidentally, kind of frequently. It always comes out with the eyes. I turns into ah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, did you ever see what's it? Dang it. Secondhand Lions.
Yes.
Yeah. I love the interview that Michael Caine gave on figuring out how to do a Texas accent.
Okay.
It talks about how, the words kind of need to rest on each other a little bit.
Exactly.
And just lay back and take it easy.
I like that a lot. I had
I
actually
love
forgotten.
Michael Caine too.
Yeah, I do too. I had forgotten that though. My parents were talking about that movie. They loved it. So there we go. Yeah. With this book, I couldn't get my mom to read it. She got to chapter 2 and she had to stop. Chapter 2 is when the kid is executed.
Yeah, there's definitely, this had been the bloodiest book that I'd narrated until, I've done a couple since then that are equally or possibly more so
Whoa,
gruesome
more so?
and monsters and kinds of things.
Okay.
So, but it's definitely up there in most violent and bloodiest fantasy that I've done.
I'm telling you, it was a phase. I'm over the phase, I promise.
So, is the one that takes place in the human world not going to be as dark and whatever then, hopefully?
It's not as dark. See, the problem that I fell into was that I got really excited about the research with medieval type things, and I found the medieval tortures page, and I used pretty much every medieval torture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of torture and whatever that takes place through this whole trilogy.
Yeah.
It's the puppeteer's favorite thing is to torture people and have other people torture people on his behalf.
Yes. He's a sweetie pie, really. I would want to be his bestie, I swear. That was a joke, I promise. I really wouldn't want to be the puppeteer's bestie. Okay. All right. Phew. I'm glad you understood the joke. All right. So I think that's it, isn't it? Is there
okay.
Megan or Sherry, do either of you have a question for Ben? All right, you answered the big one. So Sherry, you got anything?
Okay.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me, and hopefully, fingers crossed, people will pick up this trilogy as well as the Jane Austen's Dragons, because that sounds awesome. Yeah.
It's all fun.
Probably less gruesome than mine. So.
Yeah. Actually, it's a matter of that series. I'm like, somebody really should have been eaten in this one, and it didn't happen. She's a little bit more Greek in her like, just stand back, and if something happens, it happens off screen.
I see.
But this most recent one, there's a couple of people who you do find out that they get what's coming to them.
That's good. That's good. You gotta love when that
happens.
But
it took about 10 books to come right out and say that about somebody.
That's kind of funny, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
All right.
from Idaho, not Iowa, Idaho. And
Potatoes.
yes, the potato.
Potatoes,
place.
not corn.
Okay. I had this friend in high school. Her mom was she was a little bit blonde in pretty much everything she did. So I called my friend. I was like, "Hi, hi, Mrs. Van Dusen. Can I talk to Stacy?" And she goes, "Shannon, wait. I have to tell you a joke." It's like, okay. She's like, 3 potatoes are standing on a corner. Which one's the prostitute? Idaho. And then she let me talk to her daughter. But she just had to tell me that joke.
There you go. We started with the Irish bean joke and end with the Idaho joke.
Exactly.
Works for me.
It's a perfect circle. Perfect circle.
Okay.
Right.
Well, you guys have a great day over there in New York, and
Thank you.
we'll hold things down in Idaho.
Sounds good. All right. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Now, was this live on the internet?
Yes.
There was a place that they could ask questions or?
I think so, but I can't read it.
Okay, are you posting all these on YouTube?
Yes.